Hey everyone, Saber here. Welcome to the video. A few minutes ago, the new Gwent meta report was just released from TLG, and in this video we'll just be taking a look at what decks that we think that are the most popular ones right now. So you might get a better idea of what you want to play if you want to climb quickly. So obviously the big change from our last meta report is that Vi is no more. Vi got nerfed last balance patch. A lot, so that's not really a viable deck anymore. This means that a lot of other decks that didn't really do so well against it, didn't really have these tall punish options, all of a sudden are a lot more attractive. So, for tier 1, the first deck we have here is Skellige Warriors, Ursine Ritual. This is a deck that I like a lot. I have played this version, we also have a video with it here, as you can check out. And this deck is quite simply just very good for dealing with the opponent's engines, point spamming, and it just can do like pretty much everything. You don't have that many very bad matchups. It's like very unpolarized matchups. A lot of the time, if you play well and you draw well, you will actually be super fine. This version is running a bunch of tech choices, such as Grimmist and Jenge. You don't have to run these cards. You could consider cutting them and run something like maybe Totem instead. So you do definitely have a few different options for how you want to play this. But this version, like the Grimmist, just means you have a nice chance against Colgrim decks, for instance, because you can purify either their Nova or the Defender, something like that. And Jink is also nice if you go up against something like in our Witchers and need to deal with the Keldar, because Keldar can actually sometimes be a little bit tricky to deal with if it is buffed up. So Jink is just nice for that. And Blue Boy is just such a good card in this deck because you can use leader charges on it to just kill the opponent's engines. So this is one of the strongest decks right now. You can play it. You will definitely do fine with it. Now the other one is one I haven't played that much myself, but that's the Elf deck here. This is another deck that also has pretty unpolarized matchups. Like a lot of the time, you just have solid matchups that you can win if you play well. This version is kind of interesting because we're running a Lock now, we're running a Sapper. So if you go up against something like Kelly, for instance, you are in a really good position because you have Heat Wave and you have a Purify for the Defender. You have a Lock as well. And you even have movement, so going up against Kelly with this is super good. But other than that, like a bunch of good matchups. Even Skellige should also be a pretty nice matchup, I think. Because even though Skellige has a lot of removal, they actually struggle to deal with a Gesra sometimes. Obviously, this in this particular deck you can't actually buff it up to more than 5, so they have the Scoia'tael on it. But sometimes there will be situations where they don't have access to that, or maybe you play it in the bleed or something like that. And then this card will just smurf real hard. But even if it dies the turn you play it, still plays for 5 plus all the units you have back, which is usually 7 or 8. So that's the 2 decks we think are the best right now. I personally think there's a few other decks that are pretty close to being tier 1 as well. So if we move on to tier 2, then we have Witches. So now we have quite a lot of discussion, should Witches be tier 1 or tier 2, right? Because it is pretty close to Ursine and Elves, but at the same time, I personally think it might just be a little bit weaker right now. So what a lot of people are doing, they're running Prince, right? Because when you think about it, the top 2 decks here, they are running no cards that go tall, right? The tallest unit is this deck, is Turkey at 7. The tallest unit in Elves might be the engine you spawn for Feign Death. So really don't go particularly tall with any of these decks. So that means you don't really want to run Garrod, you don't really run Erden, they don't really do much. Instead we're running Prince here. Now, Prince is good because you're queuing into these tier 1 decks, but the issue starts to occur when you make this decision and then you start queuing into Kelly. Because when you queue into Kelly and you only have Prince, and sure you can maybe deal with like a Nithril or Phantom or Beast, but you won't be able to like punish Kaltulas, for instance. You don't have that tall punch. You can only like kill something small and you barely even trade up. So while Prince is good in these other matchups, you really struggle against Kelly. Which is actually quite interesting because I think Kelly might be the next really good deck. Because when you think about it, right, except that I ambush here, which is a bad matchup, then Royals is a good matchup. They don't have any tall punish. We have Witchers, they don't have any tall punish, also a good matchup. And most of these other decks here in tier 2 are actually also pretty fine matchups. So you have, for instance, Soldier Ball, which is Lockdown, but the issue for them is that Carapace can kind of just win uneven. Like if they start on red, they can just play their Urgen, and then you can only really yin it, and if you yin it, you don't really have any more punish later on. If they go on blue, they just start dash plus Crystal Skull, and the only way they can deal with it again is by using the yin. But if they use the yin, they will start struggling against other cards. Or to go Cupbearer and Lock, but then you might have like a Defender to block it. So this deck really struggles against Kelly. You have Shield Wall, which we're giving a 4-point rating, which I personally think is a little bit high. I'm not saying that this deck isn't good per se, but no one's really playing it right now. I haven't played it myself, and I don't think many people on Pro are playing it right now. It makes some sense in the meta, because we have all played this deck for a few patches ago where it was strong. And I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be like decent now either, but no one is playing it, and I feel like we might be overestimating how good it is a little bit. Personally, I would probably give it 3.75 stars, but it's a decent deck. And obviously this deck is good against Kelly, but not really something you see. Then we have Nature's Gift. Nature's Gift is really weak against Kelly as well, because, well, you don't have an answer for Kelly, you don't have an answer for Dash, you don't really have an answer for anything. They have multiple tall punishes. But this deck, though, is really, really strong this meta as well. Again, you struggle a bit versus Kelly. But other than that, like, you just have so many points. You're good versus both tier 1 decks. You're good versus witches right now. So honestly, I feel like this deck could even be a little bit higher in the ratings. Now, we didn't give it a higher rating also because it's like kind of new to the meta, and the meta could very easily adapt, which would make this deck worse again. But right now, I think this deck is a very solid choice. I'm almost at 2600 myself with it right now, in only a little bit over 50 games. So really, really strong deck. Highly recommend playing it right now. This deck got its debut last season, and it was a strong deck when it arrived, and a lot of people were surprised by it, but now it seems a little bit weaker. You can still get good results with it, but the issue it kind of has is that if you go on blue coin, quite often the opponent will just start playing damage special cards and discards. For instance, let's say you're playing Nature's Gift against Serenova and you're on red coin, then what happens is that they maybe start Helge, pull the Roach, the opponent just plays like a Circle of Life, boom, play some carry, or now you can maybe play a Pact. And they can just keep on like discarding or playing damage spells, and at some point you will kind of run out of steam. And even if you manage to force it around, you will still end up in a situation where you used all of your like, you didn't clock the opponent at all. You didn't play any coded weapons, you didn't play any Viper switches. So maybe you did a little bit of thinning with your like when you played you thinned your Nicaris and your Roach, and maybe you played your Menno, maybe you played Thinsia, but like you can't really get all these bronze clocking down. So this deck struggles a bit against some decks right now, but it can still be very strong, especially when you get red coin. Then we have Lippy, and Lippy was obviously very strong last season. It got a double nerf this time around. I feel like it's not that great right now. You can play it. I think Skellige just has better things to offer. Like, I think most of the time you'd just rather go for Warriors, but if there's a lot of killing them in the meta, I think playing a deck like this would still be very strong. I just realized that this version is running Decree instead of Heatwave, which is a little bit trolling in my opinion. So I would recommend going for Curse and Heatwave probably. And then you actually have a really good matchup against something like Kelly that becomes very popular again. Obviously though, having both tall punishes, if you go up against decks like Skellige Warriors and Deadeye, they won't do much. So you kind of just have to choose what decks you want to take against. Then we have some Geddeneth. Haven't really seen much of this, so not really sure if this is something that you should be expecting to see that much on ladder. It is a decent deck, like the Portal together with the Bear Witch Adepts is a very strong play, and Geddeneth is still a lot of points. But it's very popular right now. I do agree with the 3.75 rating. It's a solid deck, it's pretty fun to play, but not really sure what it has of like good matchups against the meta decks right now. Then we got Magic Nilfgaard, and it's kind of funny because we have given this a little bit of a low rating, but this is actually like a lot of people doing insanely well with this. Like myself, I got like 25, 15, 40 games, I think. I know Gravesh did really well with it. I know Democris did really good with it as well. So a lot of people are really doing well with this deck. You You can do some different variations. Right now I'm experimenting without Rarit, without Berengar, and you can run maybe like a Roach instead. You have like a few things you can do. And instead of the Alchemist, you can run Tortoise for a little bit more productivity. So this deck is strong, I think. It might not be the strongest Nilfgaard deck, but it seems a little bit more memeish because, of course, it is very vulnerable to when the opponent's heat waves your Monarch, then you don't actually have a Kingslayer target, which is why some people are also running Snowdrop. So if you run Snowdrop instead of Rarit, for instance, then you can use Kingslayer on the Snowdrop, and then you're actually playing for a bunch of points because both of the Snowdrops are buffing whenever you draw a card, right? And you will actually get 4 draws, so it will be a bunch of points you're getting. So I actually think I would probably recommend this for Nilfgaard right now, or even over Soldier Ball. But if it doesn't work out for you, you can try some more conventional decks like Soldier Ball. And then finally, tier 3, we got him Assimilate. It's a fine deck. Doesn't really have Troll Punish. It's kind of vanilla. It's not a bad deck, but also quite often just falls flat. It's very dependent on this Angolem finding value, which it will in quite a lot of matchups actually. Like, so if you go up against the tier 1 decks, Warriors, you will get Kaduch. If you go up against Elves, you will get Feign Death. So you will actually find value on it a lot of the time, but if you don't, your deck kind of just falls apart. And then finally, we have Congregate. Almost no one have been playing Syndicate this season. It's a little bit sad. Hopefully, we'll get some buffs soon. This deck did get one major buff though. Nilfgaardian Justice. Oops. Can now tutor your safecrackers, which means that there will be. It just gives you a lot more consistency in your round one. You can really force a lot more of the opponent. So for that reason, I think that this deck is actually quite okay, especially since a lot of decks that don't require you to run Troll Punish right now. At the same time, no one has really gotten any good results with it. Maybe it's a little bit better than we're giving it credit for right now, but no one has really shown it yet. So that was basically it for the meta report, guys. I'll obviously link the meta report in the description, so you can go in and check all the decks yourself and import them to your collection if you want to try them out. Thanks for watching the video. See you next time.